What's going on, world? Coming at you guys again. We got another quick video. Carmelo Anthony and the acquittal. Let's talk about it. So, Carmelo Anthony was convicted, and now through a motion, the previous judge has been removed. Now, new information has come out specifically stating that on the morning of the unfortunate loss of life of Austin Metcalf by Carmelo Anthony, there was text messages allegedly exchanged between Carmelo Anthony and his girlfriend, allegedly. And this specific information is saying that he stated something about he was on the verge and he was going to stab someone, he was going to lick the blood. So this is a narrative in which can be utilized to formulate a frame of mind when it comes to the mindset or psychology or character of Carmelo Anthony prior to engaging in this specific event, which makes this very interesting because if these text messages are accurate, if these text messages are true, then this is 150% definitive that the criminal justice system is prejudiced, it is corrupt, and it is biased. Because without that information, there is no definitive way to have prosecuted and convicted Carmelo Anthony for first-degree murder. Because there was no information that was given or used during trial to prove his intent, his state of mindset, or any type of premeditation. So this information, which was not included because of a gentleman's agreement, was actually utilized in order to convict Carmelo Anthony with the first-degree murder charge and give him 35 years. So the reality of the situation is if these text messages are real and this information was known, then this information was used by the criminal justice system. It was used by not only the defense attorney, but also the prosecuting attorney and also the judge for an issue of punitive measure to be included for first degree, which makes this a direct representation of bias, prejudice, and unjust and immoral actions within the criminal justice system. Now, this case no longer is within the confinement of law about right or wrong. Now we are judging this case based on character, which is not appropriate because justice is supposed to be blind. The facts of the case are the actions of the case, not someone's communication that had no correlation to what actually transpired. And this is the reason why the narrative was promoted in such intensity that Carmelo Anthony had some form of ideology that he was interested in doing harm to someone. When they talked about when Carmelo Anthony said, "Touch me and see what happens," this was the specific identifier in which they utilized to present and promote the ideology that Carmelo Anthony provoked the situation. So what they ended up doing is they took the text messages, put it to the side, and used Carmelo Anthony's words of "touch me and see what happens" as provocation. When everybody in the cultural community knows that when a person tells you "touch me and see what happens," or they draw an imaginary line or a physical line in the sand, right? If you cross over this line, there's going to be consequences and repercussions, right? We've all heard this. This is a very common cultural application of acknowledgement that if you do something, something is going to occur after. This is a well-recognized understanding. When someone says, "touch me and see what happens," or if somebody says, "cross this line," or you draw a line in the sand, and this is, if you cross over this line, everybody knows this means that something's going to happen. And I correlated this before when I talked about how a beware of dog sign in your yard is the same correlation of you telling somebody "touch me and see what happens," or you drawing an imaginary line, or you drawing an actual line in the sand to say, don't cross this line. If you cross this line and see what happens, it's the same thing when you put a placard up and you say, beware of dog, or no trespassing, and then someone comes into your yard and they get bit by a dog or they get shot. These are warnings. These are deterrents that Austin Metcalf did not adhere to. But it goes back to show specifically, as I've said before, that the criminal justice system is flawed. And right now we see a definitive and conclusive case to where, under this gentleman's agreement, that it was actually, well, the case is now tainted. It's spoiled. And realistically, what should happen at this point is Carmelo Anthony should get a mistrial, and then he'd have to go back to court again for a new trial. And again, when you look at the facts of the case, when he is stating whatever he stated in the morning, does not mean that he was still in that mindset in the afternoon. The reality of the situation is the biggest conundrum that Carmelo Anthony is going to face is the prejudice and bias by the jury and not by the judge. Because if you were to try this case on facts alone, as I've said before, through concerted group action in the state of Texas, to where more than one individual is engaging with an individual with physical violence, and not all of the individuals have to be engaged with physical violence, but they can be egging the individual on, then that concerted group effort allows the Texas self-defense doctrine to be utilized for lethal weapons and lethal means and lethal intent. So when you look at this from a factual basis, from a legal, lawful perspective, Carmelo Anthony should have been acquitted based on the law. Now, based off of however you feel, based off of what you think is morally right or morally wrong, what you feel as though Carmelo Anthony's state of mind was before or during, that's your own personal perspective, that's your own prejudice. But that is not how cases are tried in the court system. The court system is based off of what actually occurred. That's why justice is supposed to be blind. And as we see right here, right now, if those text messages are real, then the defense attorney knew about it, the prosecution knew about it, and the judge likely knew about it. Which means that for Carmelo Anthony to be convicted of first-degree murder without any factual data to have been introduced to his trial did not give weight or water for a first-degree murder charge. And that within itself is bias, is prejudice, and is corruption within the criminal justice system. And that alone should warrant Carmelo Anthony the opportunity for a mistrial.